announcements. Alrighty, everybody. Thanks for hopping on Zoom today and joining our bi-weekly. Like I said, we'll get started off with some announcements. So this week we have a lot of reminders is really what they are. But so specifically starting us off when it comes to virtual observations, please just be aware of where your laptop or whatever technology that you're using. Just be aware really like where it's at. So we never want like this technology or like the virtual observation piece to kind of change the vibe or how you're running session. But if I set my laptop up over in one corner of the room and then my students are doing work in like the other corner of the room, and I typically have music playing going on, like if I'm observing that session virtually, I'll probably be able to hear the music, which might be great if I like that music, but you know, that's not really the goal of the virtual observation. So just be cognizant and aware of where you are putting that technology, and you know, like if your students are moving from like working at tables to up to the board, like moving that technology with them so that we'll be able to hear and see kind of what's going on. Another update slash, this isn't a reminder, this is more of an announcement, but admin might be hopping in on some debriefs that you are a part of kind of throughout the rest of the semester and going forward. If you see an admin member there like joining a debrief, that's not because it is you. We are just trying to do some observations of our people who are giving you feedback so that we can continue to give them feedback and help them do better and be better and continue to grow. So if you see an extra person in a debrief, we'll probably just remind you like we're just there to observe the person giving you that feedback. But don't panic. We're just there to give them feedback, not really pay attention to like what you're doing or anything like that. Next reminder. So last bi-weekly, we had the stop communicating SI as if you need help. So this week's stop is stop communicating things that your students don't really need to know. So this can be things like, well, I was gonna have us do this in pairs, but since you're the only one here, right? Like, especially with one student, like that student then is like, all right, cool, I guess. Like, you know, they don't need to know that you plan for pairs. Like, great job adapting on your feet. But they don't need to know that you plan for pairs. And then especially with one student, it can be like, all right, well, like, am I not good enough? Like maybe I won't come next time so that it's not just one student, but you're planning for two, whatever that looks like. And I think a lot of times I said this in the Gainesville biweekly. I think a lot of times this comes out of a verbal processing moment, especially when we are trying to adapt in the moment. I'm very guilty of this as well, especially when I'm trying to adapt in the moment, because I'm not a verbal processor until I'm adapting in that moment and trying to like do something for a group of people. Then it's like my verbal process just comes right out of my mouth. So we recognize that that can be a little challenging, but just be cognizant, try and be more cognizant and aware about like what you're saying to your students, even if it's not like you directly communicating with your students. Like if you're saying it out loud, there's a good shot that they're going to hear it. And sometimes we just say things that they don't really need to hear. Sarah, did you have anything to add with that one? Cool.
No, I think that covers it. Yeah, that's one of the things that we really want y'all to do during planning, even if you don't write it down. So like it makes it a lot easier to adapt if you've kind of already thought about what you would do in these different situations. So, but the big thing is we just, you know, students don't always need to know everything. And the last thing that we really we want is for them to feel like in the case of like the example that Oscar's doing, like almost feel like bad or like they're doing like almost like they did something wrong. And that's how I've observed this over the like honestly over the years. I've observed this thing like this and I've seen it affect students. And so we just want to be really aware of like, okay, we're moving on, we're adapting, we're getting past it, and just work with what you've got, and try to make it as seamless as possible for those students. We're excited that they are there, even if it throws a wrench in our plans.
Absolutely. We are very excited that they are there. Alrighty, so continuing on, this is just a note about no-show observations. So if you are getting observed by someone on the lead team and nobody shows up, we are trying out this new thing where if that person who's observing you is fluent is a word that I might use, fluent in your content, they might have you run essentially like a mock session with your plan that you had planned. That way that person is able to give you some feedback on your facilitation skills, even if there are no students in attendance. But for instance, if I go to a biology session, me trying to act as a student for that content just is not gonna work. So that'll really just depend on who's observing you, what you're facilitating for, if that will be able to be like that. But we just wanted to let y'all know like that might be happening depending on who's observing you and if it is a no-show. But hopefully it's not gonna be a no-show and we're gonna be getting students into session. Next reminder, be sure to be adding pictures to the Google Photos drive that I want to say Victoria dropped in the chat in our GroupMe, but one of our social media assistants, dropped that in the GroupMe. It's still pretty close, like you won't have to scroll far. So just be sure to be adding pictures to that. Right now, I think I only have 2 pictures in there, and then they're basically the same picture, which like it's a great 2 pictures, but y'all are the ones like in your sessions doing fun things. So please take pictures in your sessions, put them in there. We would love to see them. But also if you just see someone else on the team like around campus and y'all take a selfie, like please add that to that. We would love to have those pictures just to be able to enjoy them, but also we typically will use them at the end of the semester ceremony. And those pictures are always great ways for us to just kind of show some people too, like what it is we're doing and how we have fun together.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say we have y'all might not know this, but we have a new dean of University College, which is supplemental instruction is a unit of University College. And so we got a new dean, we got a new leader in our midst. And so I know she's already asking me, she's very like visual, data driven, things like that. And she's already asking me for like pictures and testimonies and things of that nature. And so and she's also very, very big on marketing. She's very strategic, I think we're gonna see. And so she's already thinking about how like she can market our services, and pictures really are worth 1,000 words. We want to see all of the really cool things that y'all are doing in session, and that is the best way for us to be able to highlight those things. So please do take pictures in your sessions if there's something that you're really proud of. Make sure that you take pictures. Please take pictures, like Oscar said. We have so many wonderful pictures of like students, like our facilitators just kind of like running into each other on campus, and taking like selfies or whatever. And we just love to see it. And so please do take those pictures. It tells a very different story than just numbers. And we do have not only a new dean, but a new president as well. Not our new president, if y'all haven't gotten a chance to meet him, he is also he's very similar to Dr. Simpson Wilkie. And I know that like pictures and actually being able to see, and videos, even pictures and videos, are going to mean a lot to them. That is where we're moving, just kind of as a university as a whole. I'm very proud to say that y'all have always done a really good job of this. I feel like we've always had a lot of really good pictures and stuff, videos, visual examples of the work that y'all do with your students every day. So I just want to emphasize this one.
Yes. And then our last reminder is just please be sure that you are responding to all emails from the lead team. Typically, most emails are going to require some sort of response. So just make sure that you're responding to all of those emails, especially if it's a feedback email about a session that was observed. It is a requirement to respond to those emails. So just make sure we're doing that. Beep a boop. All right, upcoming events and deadlines. Hours logs are due tomorrow, so make sure that you don't forget about your hours. You submit those on Connect. And then another big date that you all should be aware of is the withdrawal deadline is Friday. So that is big to make sure that you are aware of that for your own purposes, but also for your students. Sarah, it looked like you already had something ready to go, so I'll let you take it over.
Well, I would just say tomorrow is the withdrawal deadline. So starting on Monday, those students are in that class for better or worse. And it is not a bad thing to remind them of that. Like, sorry, it's not. They're in there. And at the, like, whatever they do from this moment on will impact their GPA. So, but the cool thing about that is they still have a lot of time to impact their grade in the class. And so coming to sessions might be a really, well, no, not might, it is a great option to impact or maintain their GPA. So use this as an opportunity. I would say you even ask your faculty if it's okay for you to make another announcement on Monday or Tuesday of next week, just to kind of push SI again, you know. So yeah, that was it.
Yep, perfect. That's all I had to with that. So our last thing is October birthday. We only have one this month, and it is James. And today is actually the day. So very happy birthday, James, to you on this lovely day. We are so glad that you are part of the team and glad that you are here. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm assuming you'll be at Oconee Meal tonight.
Yes, yes.
Incredible. Can't wait for it.
Happy birthday, James.
Yes. So happy birthday, James. Very glad you are here and a part of this team. All righty. So let me go ahead and get our PowerPoint pulled up. Is it? Oh, no. There we go. Sorry. On a different computer than normal today. Share the screen. All righty. Sarah, once again, hop in wherever, whenever. But today we are continuing our goal setting theme for bi-weekly, and today we're focusing in a lot on those objectives and action steps that help us to really achieve our goals, and kind of getting into some more of that theory. Specifically, a lot of you have probably heard of SMART. SMART goals is what you've probably heard of before. We'll get into that a little bit as well. But, okay. Let me figure out how to change this. There we go. We wanted to start off with this quote. We found this quote in doing like research for this biweekly series, and we just really enjoyed it. It is, in the end, you can't manage what you don't measure, and you can't improve upon something that you don't properly manage. So this really kind of comes down to, like it says, like you can't manage what you don't measure. So we're going to get into that measuring piece of SMART today. So you have to, when it comes to goals, we have to be able to have that sort of measurement, because we can't improve upon something that we can't manage. And so without that measurement piece, we won't be able to get that management piece either. Sarah, did you have anything else to add? Perfect. Alrighty. So like I said, we're going to get into some more of that specifically objective and action steps today. So who can tell me the difference from last time, the difference between a goal and an objective? James.
But not mixing these two up. But an objective isn't more like short-term focused thing that you want to accomplish, and it's in service to a further overarching goal.
Not seeing any head nods. Anyone agree or disagree or have anything to add to that?
I second.
Seeing some thumbs ups now. Love it. Yes. So yes, like James said, goals overarching, typically more broad, whereas our objectives are going to be more specific, and then those kind of build up onto each other to make our goals. So with that, we wanted to introduce, like I said, a lot of you have probably heard of SMART goals, or like this theory of SMART before. But we just wanted to make sure that we go over it for those who may not be as familiar with it. But SMART is an acronym. And when we talk about SMART, because our goals, right, goals are those overarching bigger things, we're talking more about like SMART objectives and like SMART action steps. So when you hear SMART, think more objective and action step than like that big overarching goal, right? But like I said, SMART's an acronym. So for S, we have specific. So, you know, thinking about like, what will you achieve? What will you do? What are those specific things that you're going to be doing? M, measurable. What data will you use to determine whether or not you've met the goal? So once again, kind of going back to that quote, we have to be able to measure it so that we can track our progress and manage it so that we'll be able to actually make progress towards our goal. So how am I going to determine whether or not I'm reaching this goal? What will I use? What scale? What am I going to use to determine, like, am I making progress or if I reached my goal? Achievable. Are you sure that you can do this? Do you have the right skills and resources? You know, is this something that is actually possible? I gave the example yesterday in Gainesville that, you know, if I set an objective of playing or starting, even playing, and honestly, even playing in an NBA, professional NBA game, like that is not particularly an achievable goal for me. For someone, sure, but me and the NBA, just like, that's not really gonna happen. You might also think of achievable as realistic, but what happens when we think of achievable as realistic, a lot of times it gets confused as the actual R, which the actual R is for relevant. So thinking about, does this actually advance me towards that big overarching goal that I have set? You know, because I think a lot of times what we run into is we're setting these SMART objectives, or we're thinking about like, all right, I want to do this, I want to do that, without necessarily thinking about, all right, what's my overarching goal? Why do I want to do that? What's my motivation for achieving that? Is it really getting you and advancing you towards that bigger overall goal? And then the T in SMART is for time bound. So some sort of time sensitivity. What is the deadline for accomplishing this goal, for accomplishing this objective, for accomplishing this action step? And I think a lot of times when setting goals and objectives, we don't think about that T very often. And that's where that, can't think of the word, but like insufficient goal setting comes in, because when we don't include that time piece, what tends to happen for most people, myself included, is, oh yeah, like that's a thing that I need to get done. Like I'm going to do that. And then a week later, it's, oh yeah, like it's just on the back burner. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get it done. And then a few months later, it's the same thing, right? We continuously just push it off because we didn't initially set that time piece of like, all right, I'm having this done by this day, or I'm going to be doing it every week. Having that sort of time piece really helps us hold ourselves accountable to achieving and reaching these things that we're setting. Sarah, anything to add? All righty. So last time we kind of talked about how we're going to get into some workshopping of those objectives and action steps today, but we wanted to get you thinking of this almost in like a visual sense as well. Like we introduced in the second biweekly, I think it was, with like the pyramid of like, all right, here's our goal, our action steps, and our objectives. They all kind of build upon each other. We thought of some other visuals about how it kind of works. So here at the top, we have factor trees. So hopefully you all remember or are being reminded now of factor trees that you probably did in like elementary, maybe middle school, where you take a number and you're like, all right, 4 times 6 is 24, 2 times 2 is 4, right? You get it down to those prime numbers. You're trying to get 24 down into its multiple of primes, its prime factorization, right? Just kind of, it's a nice little like getting it down to those prime numbers, right? So in this instance, our goal is that big overall number, right? And then we're working down. So like 4 and 6 in this instance might be objectives. And then these two are action steps that we'll take to reach that objective. 2 and 3 are those action steps that we'll take to reach that objective. And then I also like this visual because you can kind of see sometimes our objectives have action steps, which then also have more action steps for that one action step. I also like the factor tree because I'm a math guy, but also because, as you can kind of see here, we have different ways to factor 24, right? So just because my goal is 24 and Sarah's goal is also 24, how we go about that might look differently. And then for maybe some more non-math people, that's okay if that is you. We have some other visuals. So right here we have a cornucopia, very fall vibes. We love it. But kind of right here, like where all of the fruit and pumpkins and squash and all that is kind of coming out, right? It's that big circle. So like that's our big goal. But as you get further and further back into the cornucopia, you'll kind of see it gets smaller and smaller, right? So we have this big goal, which as we get further back, we're going to get into smaller objectives, which get into even smaller action steps. And then very similar here thing with a funnel, we have that big kind of goal at the top. And then we got to break that goal down into smaller and smaller pieces, smaller into those objectives and action steps. And then you could also kind of think of it as a concept map, right? So we got our big overarching goal in the middle, and then objectives kind of branching off from each of those, which then breaks off into those even smaller action steps. yeah, so like I said, wanted to give you all some visuals to kind of be thinking about and be thinking about as we talk about these things. Sarah, did you have anything to add before we move on? Sweet. All righty. So what we're gonna do next is, as a group, we're gonna practice creating and coming up with some objectives and action steps. Right. So can y'all see this Word document? Love it. Seeing some head nods. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right. So most of us, right, have some sort of goal around, getting a job in some sort of field, right? So let's say like the goal we are going to work around, oh gosh, I'm about to see how bad my typing is on a keyboard. I'm not used to. All right, so let's say our goal, we can use my goal kind of coming out of grad school, which was getting a job, oh Lord, working with college students, right? So let's say that was my goal kind of coming in out of grad school. So an objective that a lot of people have is, when it comes to especially getting that career, is objective, let me type, is getting a degree, right? So can anyone come up with what an objective statement might be that is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and has that time sensitivity that's around getting a degree that would advance me towards that goal?
Maybe like staying on course with your plan of study.
All right. Any thoughts on that? Or any other objective type statements?
Can I add?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm thinking about an objective specifically getting me toward that goal of working, obtaining a job working with college students, it might be something like earn my bachelor's degree in 2 more years or something. But now we've got to look at that as like, okay, is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? Is it time bound? So can someone help me
Yeah,
answer those questions?
do we think earning my bachelor's degree in 2 more years is specific? I see some head nods. I'm wondering if we could make this a little more specific.
Maybe you could like add what your degree would be in, like your major to it.
Okay.
And that'd be even more specific.
Someone give me a major. Katie, I'm going to use yours. Or Andrew?
My major?
Andrew,
You want to know my
guys-
major?
I don't know.
Wait, what is happening?
I don't know. I don't know, y'all.
Oh, wait,
Oh,
are we
man.
doing a major for the college students or just any major?
Let's
Just
just
any
do
major.
any major. It's all
Oh,
gonna be
yeah,
pretty
you can use
applicable.
mine. Kinesiology.
Oh gosh,
Represent.
Good job, Oscar.
my spelling is not great, so the fact I got that.
You did it.
All right, so now we have earned my bachelor's degree in kinesiology in 2 more years. All right, are we feeling like that's specific enough?
I mean, you can go real specific and have like a goal, like have a piece of the puzzle being like graduating magna cum laude or something.
You could.
Okay.
G.
That's not realistic for some people, though.
It just depends. It just depends. That's why it's different for every single person.
Yep. I would also say, to get it a little more specific, we could also say earn my bachelor's degree. Oh Lord. In kinesiology from UNG, because I know not everybody is trying to stay at UNG to graduate from UNG, but maybe that's UGA, maybe that's Clemson, like wherever you're trying to graduate from, like that's your objective. Like that's a very specific, like I'm earning my bachelor's degree in kinesiology from the University of North Georgia, graduating magna cum laude in 2 years. So I think that's a pretty specific objective. Is that measurable?
What's the measure? Can anybody identify what the measure is?
You've got a diploma in your hand.
I feel like that's a pretty measurable thing.
Yes. I also think we have 2 measures in this goal, right? It's the measure of getting the diploma and then also the measure of our GPA if we're trying to graduate magna cum laude, right? So we actually have 2 measures in this goal. Alrighty, would this be relevant getting towards attainable? Is this attainable, achievable? I skipped A.
Depends on what your where you are in your course of study. Number 1. Number 2, depends on what your current GPA is. I think those are the 2 that I'm thinking. But if you were to assume that you are a soft, like going into your junior year when you're setting this goal or this objective specifically, and that you already have a 3.75 as a GPA, then yes, I think that could be attainable.
I would agree with
Or
that.
achievable.
Real.
Would this- Oh, sorry.
Go for it, Sarah.
Well, I mean, my question is, would this be realistic? How would we need to adjust this goal? Say if we were a junior, but our GPA was a 3.2. Is it real, like, is it achievable to go from a 3.2 to a 3.75 in 2 years? I can't see anybody, by the way, so I don't know if people are like responding to me.
No,
I think
that'd
I saw
be awesome.
1.
What, Andrew?
That would be impossible.
It would be impossible. So Andrew, how would you maybe adjust this goal to make it more achievable?
Maybe
If you-
like a 3-4.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't even know if you could get to the 3.5 for cum laude at a 3.2 in your junior year. So yeah, maintaining above a 3.0 GPA, would that be an option?
And some head nods, a thumbs up.
Okay. So like, I asked that question just to kind of illustrate if we're at different levels, we might need to think about like the realistic, the achievable piece, and set ourselves up for success where that is concerned. So cool.
When it comes to our R of relevant, if our goal is just getting a job in X field and kinesiology is a good major for that field, then boom, relevant, incredible, we love it. T, time bound. What do we feel about that? I see a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up from the same person. Another thumbs up.
Okay, so I think we could probably be a little bit more specific here. Because 2 years, what is that like? What does that mean exactly? Is it 2 years from the day that you're setting the goal? Is it 2 years from
Your college experience.
yeah, so like I wonder if it would be more helpful for us to say maybe what is 2 years from now? Freaking A.
All 25.
Yeah. In fall 2025. So that gives us very specific things like Katie said from the beginning, staying on course with your plan of study. That's a really good I would say that's a good action step for this objective. And that like we would need to then be able to plan our plan of study out with that fall 2025 date in mind, right?
Alrighty. So like Sarah said, I think staying on course with my plan of study is an action step for that objective. But I'm curious, kind of thinking back to our visuals, like, do we feel like staying on course with my plan of study, is that our final prime number? Is that our smallest piece of the funnel? Is that our furthest point out on the concept map? Or do we feel like there's another action step that would go into that action step?
Well, to stay on course with your plan of study, you have to pass your classes. So that's even more specific.
Okay.
Okay.
How do you determine what your plan of study actually is?
You pick a major.
All right. Okay. Assuming that you already know, because you already know that your major is kinesiology, who's giving you your plan of study? Like, who's walking you through that?
Your advisor. Right?
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, you're hopefully. I know there's some debate over that, but hopefully your advisor or a faculty mentor in your department, somebody is going to be able to kind of help you set that plan of study up. so that you have something to work with.
So another action step for that might be meet with my advisor before, what's that word? Registration.
Registration.
All I could think of was scheduling. I was like, that's not it. Registration opens every semester to plan out my classes for the following semester and talk about my progress towards my degree.
Okay. Is pass my classes and meet with my advisor the prime? Is it prime? Or are there other things, like, are there steps that lead up to those?
It seems pretty like that's as narrow as it could get. Unless you're getting to the point where you like find out advisor, stuff like that.
Yep. Okay, so Andrew, you just said find out who my advisor is. So maybe with that, it needs to be check my Tran guide
Mhm.
beforehand to make my appointment with my advisor. And that's another action. That's another action step with that too. We can't just walk into our advisor's office, right? So like we have to then make an appointment with the advisor. Like, yes, it gets very small. It gets kind of like, well, duh, but it does really help to sometimes get it down as like small as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
It also helps with like, isn't it dopamine? Like when you get to
Yes.
check off of a list. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. When you get to just check off, like, all right, I've done that. Beautiful, perfect, we're thriving, right?
Yep.
Feels great.
It also helps you measure. It adds to that measurability piece as well, like when you're checking in, because like 2 years for till fall 25, that's actually a pretty long way to wait. Like it is time bound and that's great, but like how do we know that we're actually moving forward? And that's by those little decisions that we make every day, right? So it might seem overkill to get it down to these like little like minuscule levels, but it is actually, at least as far as practicing it, like practicing goal setting, can be really helpful. All right, Oscar, where are we wanting to go? Gosh, we could do this like all day.
Yeah, we really could. I think what is going to be best is if we kind of end today with, and kind of even just bringing it back to what Sarah was just talking about, to bring it back to our initial quote, right? We can't manage what we don't measure, and we can't improve upon something that we aren't properly managing. So by getting these objectives and action steps to those small little pieces, that helps us to be able to better manage our goals and make sure that we're making that consistent progress towards our goals. So I always like to kind of bring that back in as well. But I think what we should do is spend the last, like, I know we only have like 3 minutes, especially by the time I finish saying this, but I think we should spend these last like 3 minutes, or if you have a little bit of extra time, to start doing this with your goals that you set. So you set at least one personal, at least one SI. Start coming up with what those objective steps and what the action steps are needed for those objectives are. And just really taking that time to determine like, all right, like, is this actually an objective, or is this more of an action step towards an objective? And when you're coming up with these objectives, like, are these specific? Like, is this specific enough? Like, I put a time on there of 2 years, but is that, what does 2 years mean? You know, getting it down to those specific things so that it becomes easier to measure, it becomes easier to manage. Sarah, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I think that says it. I think what I would like everyone to do is just take intentional time over the next 2 weeks and start looking at your goals. Some of you might want to bullet out a list like what Oscar did. You could potentially do kind of like a factor tree type thing, or a fun, like, you can be creative with it, a concept map, whatever makes sense kind of in your mind, but get it down on paper. Don't just think about it, because when you put it on paper, like, it makes it much more realistic, and makes it, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much it. Makes it realistic, like, it makes it real, right? We can keep all of this stuff in our head, but it's not actually serving us unless we have something tangible to look at. So that's what I would encourage everyone to do. Once again, these biweeklies, every single one of these biweeklies this semester, you'll get out of it what you put into it. So goals are something that are very specific to you, and so do it for yourself. So yep, that's it.
Alrighty, well, being that it's 1:48, I think we are gonna go ahead and kind of wrap up in there. But like Sarah said, please do take some of that time to be thinking about those objectives and action steps that you want to be making towards your goal. And like Sarah said, writing it down. There's like this quote that's like, if you write your goals down, you're X amount more likely to complete them. And if you tell somebody, it's even more than that. So like, that might be an action step, like identifying an accountability partner. And an action step would be like asking that like person to be your accountability buddy on making progress and achieving your goal, or doing that specific action step. So share these goals, write them down, share them. That is very helpful. But once again, don't forget your hours are due tomorrow. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day, a great weekend, and that you are enjoying this lovely fall weather that we've been having.
Hi, everyone.